maybe that are up there, but I just, in the interest of time, I apologize. We were late getting in, but we'll make up for lost time. I handed out a little sheet that has some questions on it. I thought it might be fun for some of you to see how many you can get right. So what I thought we might do is start out by just reviewing these. That might spur some discussion or some questions, but primarily what I'd like to use our time for is not for you listening to me give any long speeches, but simply to turn the meeting over to all of you to find out what you want to talk about, to see what advice and counsel you have for me in addressing this mess that we have these days. Or if you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. I have with me today a couple members of my staff from Topeka. Bobby, say hi, and Bill Brooks, say hi. They're in our Topeka office, and we have a great staff in Topeka and Washington and down in Pittsburgh. We stand ready to help you any day that you need. If you want to call and give us advice and counsel, folks like this will be on the other line, and they'll get the information to me. Also with us today is someone, Paul, from the Kansas Democrat Party, who is paid to come tape everything that I say every day to catch us in a YouTube moment. So if you're going to speak, smile pretty and just be prepared to see yourself on YouTube. So we can welcome Paul to the party. Let's just get started and go through some of these. Like I said, sometimes it spurs some discussion. If people came without any questions, by the time we go through this, we have a few. On the first question, as far as how the budget breaks down, 19% of our budget is defense, 23% is Medicare and Medicaid, 6% is interest on our public debt, and that's with interest rates at an all-time low. 2% is foreign aid, 20% is Social Security, 3% is unemployment compensation, 0.4% is earmarks and pork barrel spending, and 4% is welfare. On question 2, I'm sad to report that our debt is now at 100% of our gross domestic product. On question 3, it is 40 cents on every dollar that we borrow to pay our bills. On question 4, the waste, fraud, and abuse figure is estimated to be about $100 billion. Question 5 is false. Question 6 is 70%. Question 7 is 51%. Question 8 is 70. And that question is, what was the life expectancy when we created Medicare? It's 70, and you might be interested to know our life expectancy today. We're going in the right direction, is 79. So we're living about 9 years on average more than we did when that was created. Question 9 is 31%. Question 10 is 3. So if that helps anybody learn a thing or two, I thought it was kind of interesting going through there, just as involved as I am to see if I got one. So with that, I really do want to just turn this meeting over to all of you to find out what I need to know, what I need to hear, and we'll just start right there.
Basically, 2 Social Security questions.
Okay.
The first one is, when a person retires, whether it be early retirement or regular retirement, receives his benefits, then he must go back to work because he cannot make a living. At this point, we cannot either opt out of paying more Social Security in because we will not ever receive any additional benefits, or if we could receive additional benefits by continuing to pay out. And the question that we have, why can't we do that? Either opt out or continue receiving benefits, but when we pay in, receive additional benefits? That's the first question.
Okay. Well, I think Social Security is on the table to be reformed, and certainly those questions are all questions that we will need to resolve as we reform what they're called entitlement programs or mandatory spending items. And as you heard from Republicans early this year when we passed our budget, included in the budget was a proposal to basically save Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid by reforming them. Now, what you have to remember, because people have just done nothing but lie about it, is the proposal on the table is to make no changes for folks that are 55 and older. So even if we were talking about making a change that you suggest, I imagine the folks that are 55 and older, they're not going to have any cuts, and they're not going to have any benefits for any changes. All what we're talking about making changes for are those of us that are just pushing 50 or below that mark. And the reason that we've done that is most people have planned all their life for the rules that exist today, and they've made plans accordingly. We just don't think it's fair to change it on either side, either for the good or the bad, as people are halfway down the stream or in retirement, or very close, near retirement. But those of us that aren't quite there yet, we've got time to react. I mean, we can make adjustments accordingly. And so that's kind of the theory. But I think those are great questions, and they will be discussed as we craft, hopefully, a new program.
Twice I have written to your office and called your office and did not get a response to those questions. So my next question to you was this: if that would come up, how would you vote? For or against opting out or increasing benefits to the retirees?
It would have to depend on the whole package. I mean, right now I supported reforming, saving the system. Right now, for example, Medicare is bankrupt. In 8 years, how many of you plan to live 8 years? Medicare, as we know it today, is bankrupt. It's gone. It will no longer exist. And so, Social Security is in trouble too, because every year these folks in Washington didn't balance their budget and spent more money than they took in. Where do you think they robbed from? They robbed from the Social Security Trust Fund. So we're in trouble. We can't sustain the programs that exist today. So we're not going to be given a vote, a straight up or down vote on that or this or the other. What we're going to be doing is reforming the whole system and then being asked to vote yes or no. What I have voted already yes for is we need to save the system. And depending on, I mean, for every benefit you give somebody, you've probably got to make a tweak on the other side. I mean, because we are in trouble, folks. You can't spend $1.5 trillion more than you take in every year. You can't sustain a $14.5 trillion national debt at 100% of our gross domestic product. We are on the wrong trajectory. So it would just, on that, I couldn't tell you because I would have to see the whole package. But I would have to tell you, it would, it's going to be a discussion that has to be had. No.
It seems obvious by the question that you've got for us to answer here, and your comments that you're defending the changes that need to be made in Social Security and Medicare. And when you talk about reform, you mean cuts in services. When you talk about reforms, now for 55 and older, yes, but for everybody else, you're going to cause more out-of-pocket expenses for anybody on Medicare.
No, but I'll tell you what it is,
Okay.
the plan is.
Okay, now, but you did vote for the Ryan plan, which does all of that.
No.
It reduces benefits, costs more. Well, some people say it does. The Social Security stuff, also the health care reform that you opposed, which is helping lots of people right now. Okay, Medicare, Social Security, the health care reform all help middle-class Americans. Those are our programs that you're willing to slash and burn, in my opinion. At the same time, you oppose tax breaks. You support the tax breaks for big oil, which made over $32 billion in profits in the first 3 months. And the tax breaks, you won't cut those out. You supported those in March. There's lots of other things that you've done. The stimulus. which helped middle America. You oppose that. It seems to me like you've refused to raise taxes on the wealthy. So it seems like you're protecting the rich at the expense of the middle class. You're willing to cut middle class programs, but you're not willing to cut those that can most afford to pay for it.
Yes.
So I don't know how you can justify that.
I am so glad you asked those questions, if there was a question, because you've got some really bad information and somebody's been lying to you, and I'm sorry about that.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Would you like to know the facts?
Well,
Someone would like to know the facts.
Your interpretation's not good.
Well, I think I'm the only one in the room there when these negotiations are going on. And I'm the one that, I hope everybody reads the bill, that this year in the new Congress, we're allowed to read the bills before we vote on them. And when it comes to, I don't even know where to start, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, let's just start there, because I know they're bankrupt, no one is going to get them after 8 years. And if we don't do something about it to save it now, it won't exist. And so the changes that we're talking about is, as I suggest, maybe no changes for those that are 55 and above, and those that are of us that are 55 and below. Not talking about slashing anything, we're talking about making 2 changes. And one change is an income adjustment. We don't think Warren Buffett's waiting for his Medicare. You know, if those that are in the very wealthy category, I don't believe are sitting there waiting for their Social Security and Medicare checks. And the other change is an age adjustment, moving it throughout many years, a few months at a time, bumping it up 2 years, because as we learned from the data before you, we're living on average 9 years longer than when those programs were started. So to ask me to work 2 more years, I don't think is too much to ask. Those are the changes, plain and simple, to those programs. To tax reform, you know, this is the one that cracks me up. I've watched the liberals talk about how Republicans are protecting millionaires and billionaires, and refuse to talk about closing loopholes, when in fact we were the ones that started the discussion about this. If they wanted to do something about it, the last 2 years they had unfettered power. They could have done anything. They could have tripled the tax on the millionaires and billionaires, closed all the loopholes, but they chose not to, for good reason. But now that Republicans have control of the House, we're the only ones with a plan on the table for fundamental tax reform. And this is the plan. It is to eliminate all of the loopholes that you were talking about. Because GE is not paying any taxes. You know, who thinks that's a good idea? It's because very wealthy folks can afford high-powered tax attorneys and lobbyists to go to Washington and get bills passed that line their wallets, and it's not fair, and it's fundamentally wrong, in my view. And so our proposal for fundamental reform eliminates the tax loopholes, it broadens the base, and gets the 51% of Americans that aren't paying any individual income tax back to work, back on the tax rolls, because as I suggest, most of the people taking advantage of the tax breaks are the wealthy. So if you get them back on the payroll, or get them back on the tax rolls, you can do that with a static economic model. When you make all those changes, it comes out at what you call tax or revenue neutral, meaning it doesn't raise or lower taxes as a whole. But what you do is you plug that same reform into a dynamic macroeconomic model, and what you see is the huge growth we get in revenues. Our revenues grow at the federal level by making these changes, because no one can skirt out of paying their fair share at that point. And so that's what our proposal is to get the growth out of the tax reform and then get the spending in check. And the best way to do it is through those mandatory spending items, which are 60% of the budget and the real drivers behind that. Obamacare, I just disagree. I voted against it, and I have voted to repeal it. We need health reform. reform, but that was the wrong way. It did nothing in 2,400 pages to address the issue at hand, and that is the rising costs of health care. We had an alternative package that we offered when the debate was going on. Of course, the rules were different. We couldn't even get